Assignment 3, Part 3. This is the last bit. You've done well to get to this stage. Number 5. Economic factors influencing migration. Throughout history, economic factors have often played a role in shaping the movements of the Jewish people. The story of the Jews in the modern world provides a number of examples. Often, economic factors combined with other factors. One example of this is the mass migration from Russia to the USA in the late 19th century. See section 1 above. Another example is the recent mass migration from the former Soviet Union to Israel. See section 3 above, where better economic prospects combined with people's desire to leave a harsh social and political environment. The following examples describe other modern-day Jewish migrations caused by a mixture of factors, but with economic issues at the centre. A. The North African migration to France. In the 1950s, much of North African Jewry moved to Israel. However, about 200,000 Jews also moved to France. Their push factor, increasing anti-Jewish, anti-Israel feeling in their Arab homelands, was identical to those who moved to Israel. Their pull factors were different though. They were familiar with French language and culture from France's colonial influence in North Africa, and they wanted to move to a place where they could improve their standards of living. These were practical considerations, rather than ideological reasons. The French Jewish community experienced a large boost of energy thanks to these immigrants, who soon worked their way up in society. This situation contrasted with the North African immigrants to Israel, who were at a disadvantage because of their foreign language, and also because many of their community leaders had actually moved to France. These immigrants and the next generations struggled to establish themselves. B. The Russian migration to Germany. Tens of thousands of Jews from the former Soviet Union have moved to Germany since the late 1990s. This is another example of economic reasons dominating decision-making. The stigma of Jewish life in post-Holocaust Germany is considerable, so only Jews focused on purely practical reasons would think about moving there. Of the 100,000 Jews who live in Germany today, the vast majority are former Russians. C. The South African migration to Australia. Large numbers of Jews have been leaving South Africa since the mid-1990s and moving to countries in the English-speaking world, especially Australia. Socially and politically, these Jews felt increasingly uncomfortable in a society undergoing dramatic change, the entry into power of the black population. Many Jews felt uncertain about the future of the country and about their future within the country. They also felt vulnerable to the country's rising crime rate. In addition, the fall in value of the South African currency made many feel that they should get out before they would not be able to do so financially. The recent emigrant Jews of South Africa have had a large impact on the community of Australia, providing a massive injection of talent and energy into local Jewish leadership. South African Jews always tended to develop a very strong Jewish and Zionist identity. All of these examples illustrate a major factor in the story of the modern Jewish world. In an increasingly mobile world, people are increasingly able to change their economic and social circumstances by changing where they live. This applies to the Jews as much as anyone else. Number 6. Assimilation and intermarriage. In the pre-modern world, assimilation and intermarriage would have been infrequent. Jews lived in tightly knit communities and kept to themselves. However, From the 16th century onwards, and with the emergence of the modern world, traditional boundaries which had separated Jews and non-Jews began to fall. As many Jews encountered the ideas of the outside world and felt more accepted in their societies, their own religious beliefs grew weaker. Some gave up religion altogether, others converted to Christianity, and others wanted to remain Jewish but marry non-Jewish partners. The number of Jews intermarrying climbed over time, reaching a peak in the early 20th century, particularly in Western and Central Europe. Perhaps the destruction of European Jewry through the Holocaust and the rising anti-Jewish hatred that came with it slowed down the rate of intermarriage in the mid-20th century. However, the Jewish world today is seeing higher and higher rates once again. The main reasons for this are quite clear. The modern-day Western belief in romance and emotional connection is the only criterion for a relationship. The irrelevance of Judaism as a religion to many contemporary Jews. The ignorance of many Jews of their tradition and history. The relaxation of communal prohibitions and sanctions. On the whole, Orthodox communities maintain a traditional stance on this issue. People who intermarry have made a decision to leave Judaism. On the other hand, some non-Orthodox religious communities, such as the Reform and Conservative movements, have made a deliberate decision to welcome non-Jewish partners into their congregations. Their major argument is that pushing such families out of the community will weaken the Jewish people in the long run. Encouraging them to re-enter the community will create the basis for a strong and meaningful Jewish life for at least some. This whole subject raises the question of who should be counted as a Jew nowadays. There are religious definitions, there are social definitions, and there are psychological definitions. What about people who have a Jewish partner? What about people who were raised as Jewish but no longer do anything Jewish? What about people who live their Jewish lives outside of a Jewish community? What about people who practice Judaism together with another religion? These questions have consequences for planning resources and programs, but they also point to a more fundamental issue. Modern-day Jewish identity and involvement mean different things to different people and are more complicated than ever before.